What's up, guys? It's Crash, and we finally have information hard and fast on what Mr. Battlefield is up to, what his next move is, as him and several other former DICE developers have announced their new studio, TTK Games. So I want to go ahead and get into that with you guys, take a look at their website, take a look at what they have going on, and there's an article from GameIndustry.biz, with a lot of information in there, and we can see kind of what direction they're headed as a studio, and I think some of the stuff in here you guys are going to find really interesting. And it also gets into a little bit of the culture at DICE and potentially why Mr. Battlefield and some of his other colleagues at the new TTK Time to Kill Studios left DICE. And it goes along with some of the Glassdoor reviews that we talked about in a video quite a while back about some of the toxic work culture and stuff at DICE. So let's go ahead and get into this. There's some really cool information in here, and I just want to talk about it with you guys. I'm excited to get into it. I think the quickest way to do it is look at this stuff online and just get the info to you guys. So this is the website. You can go over to ttkgames.com and check it out. And the overall arching kind of paradigm that they're working with over there is getting industry veterans with a new generation of developers, and that's why they chose to go with the Unreal 5 engine. And we'll get into it just a little bit more a little bit later, but that's why when we talked to Jim Heil of EA, the former EA developer that worked on Battlefield on the rendering side of Battlefield 2042, talked about the challenges of working with Frostbite. Also, every time you get somebody on board, a new developer, you have to teach them Frostbite. Now, Unreal Engine that you guys are going to find out they're working on over at TTK Games, that's what they're trained on. When they go to college, when they go to school, they get trained on things like Unity, Unreal Engine 5. Epic Games handles Unreal Engine 5. They don't have to have a team of engineers to work on Frostbite. Unreal 5 is kind of its own product that's handled third party, so they just work on creating, right? We talked about that a lot. So like when you go to perform a song or write a song, you don't build a piano first. You know, when you go to film a movie, when you make a short film or some kind of video or YouTube video, you don't build a camera first. So you use those tools that are already there. So that's kind of what's going on over here. Then you guys can see who is involved. Lars Gustaffson, of course, Mr. Battlefield. Dan Berlin is a senior designer. Vidar Nygren and Peter Hoyle. So all these guys high up, former DICE that worked on some of our favorite games, Battlefield 1942, 4, 2042, 2042, Battlefield 1, 3, and 5, Far Cry, Medal of Honor. So you guys can go see, I mean, you guys recognize them. If you're following my channel, you know who those guys are. So if we pop over to this article, this is where you can really start to figure out what is up with these guys and what they're working on. Of course, it's led by Lars Gustaffson, Mr. Battlefield, who up until November last year ran the Battlefield series as creative director over at DICE, but with plans to scale up between 80 and 120 employees. So that's a way smaller studio than DICE at this point, with everyone working remotely and everything like that across the different studios. Much smaller team than what's working on Battlefield. However, they are working on a new shooter built in Unreal Engine, and we'll talk a little bit about how that's so much easier to work in and easier to recruit people in, and they're not going to be held back by the Frostbite engine limitations. But 80 to 120 employees are what they're working towards, which is quite a few on the surface, but still a fairly small studio with these 7 founders getting started. Alongside Gustafson, the team includes Dan Berlin as a senior design director. Berlin worked at Ubisoft, Vivendi, and most recently was lead world designer and design director on Battlefield. Vidar is a CTO, so chief technical officer and technical director, and had been at DICE since 1996. He was technical director on Battlefield and directed the actual creation of EA's Frostbite engine. So this guy is going to be switching to Unreal Engine 5, which is pretty interesting. Peter Hoyles is TTK's art director. He rose to studio art director at DICE's LA studio. So Ripple Effect worked on Battlefield Portal and a lot of the DLCs from the Battlefield games that we loved back when we used to get DLC maps. And I highlighted some of the most interesting stuff to talk about. Berlin says it's about mixing. I don't necessarily like to call myself old. I don't feel super old, but the old with the new. So they're going to take industry veterans, and now they'll be able to hire new and upcoming developers, and they don't have to teach them how to use Frostbite, right? They can just hit the ground running with Unreal, mixing old with new talent. We need young and untainted minds to dare to come in with radically different ideas. Maybe our experience can help with the facilitation of this hive mind that sets up diversity of different perspectives that can bring nuances and at first glance crazy ideas to the table. So if we remember a lot of the stuff we learned about DICE and some of the people that left there, and if you look at the Glassdoor reviews, it sounds like there's allegedly a lot of cronyism, like you have to be in the inner clique to get your ideas heard, and it sounds like they're trying to create a much better culture where they say later on in the article, it doesn't really matter where the idea comes from. If it's good, that's what we need to run with. So you can really hear some of those issues that they had back in DICE with the work culture over there kind of coming through in this interview, if you kind of know what you're looking for. Some of the other stuff they said with Berlin said it's about a humbleness for anyone who takes up a leadership position. You shouldn't think that you know everything. Again, alluding to the cronyism over at DICE. He says, take Lars, for example. You're not going to find Lars in some corner office with a nice view. He sits where everyone else sits. The same goes for all of us. It's not even a conversation. So it's kind of a it's kind of what you do as a if you're a good leader, if you're a good manager, as a good boss, I really think you need to look at the thing, look at the view, look at your job. Like you're not the people below you aren't working for you. They're working with you. And it sounds like that's the culture that they're trying to build. Sorry, that was a terribly long way to get to get around to what I was trying to say. But anyway, he says, to be fair, why should it matter where a good idea comes from? That's just a silly thought. If we find a gold nugget, it doesn't matter if it's my mother who came up with it, right? Like good ideas can come from anywhere. So now they're up to 7 employees, but the time has been spent establishing what the studio is all about and what it's trying to be. So they go on to talk about how they haven't really put the cart before the horse. They're really trying to figure out what direction they wanted to go, what the studio's about, the work culture, and what kind of game they want to build before they start bringing on those around 120 employees. Berlin says, we don't want people to come here and be like, there's no proper onboarding, no company handbook, no company culture. We want to make sure that's all in place. And that's been the bulk of the work, right? So you don't want to start bringing people in and there's nothing to do yet. So they're trying to come up with their direction. So when people are on board, they're going to town. Gustaffson says we have, of course, jumped in on thesis work to see what directions we could possibly go in. That will help us dictate the final size of the studio, as most people in the industry tend to realize bigger isn't already better. All right. We've also heard rumors over at DICE of things kind of getting lost within the bureaucracy. Too many people. It's too difficult to get everyone moving in the right direction. Too many cooks in the kitchen, as they say. The company's 3 core values are lead by example, push boundaries, and deliver on promises. So that all sounds like really good stuff that DICE has also had issues with in the past. Considering their history, it makes sense for the founders of TTK Games to build a multiplayer shooter. Of course, they all came from some of the best. There's many different things you need to do to stand out for sure. Berlin says you need to deliver something you will only get in our game. You need to have a secret sauce, I guess. We're not going to talk about that here. It's a little bit too early, but we're working on that ingredient. So it doesn't sound like they're going to make a Battlefield clone. It sounds like they want to make something a little bit different with something that's kind of their own thing. So it's not going to be necessarily a Battlefield game, but let's get into what they are going to say, because it sounds like it is still going to be a squad-based shooter. Maybe there'll be a squad management system where you can kick players you don't want to play with, or lock the squad that only your friends can join. Can you imagine having something like that, guys? Wouldn't that be crazy? It's difficult to build a super strong core game and then attach a meta to that, he says. So we've started the other way around. So they're working with the meta of the game, kind of what they want its catchphrase, its special thing to be, and then work on the core game around that. So they're flipping that around. Gustafson says the company has the money for it to take its time and make sure the foundation is there, both with the studio and with its first project. So it sounds like they're not going to be rushed. They have the funding to take their time and make sure it's right. Berlin continues to say the time is a thing that's one of the main attractors for me, because the first idea you have for design is going to fail. He talks about how your first design is going to fail. You need to work on that, take it back to the drawing board, mold it into something good. When you get that good idea, that's when you start cementing and start building the game. So again, you hear those things about, if you kind of read into it a little bit more, and I might be going just a little bit too far, but you can hear we knew DICE was crunched. They had to put the game out a little bit early. They didn't have a choice. And it sounds like they're excited to be able to take their time and the time that they need to come out with a finished product. The move to Unreal helps with this, Nygren said, who has spent much of the last 15 years building and working on EA's Frostbite engine. It's really exciting to explore the community around Unreal, he says. Unreal is getting big. He said it's really exciting to see what we can do with those and how fast we can find the fun while prototyping. So using the tools to be able to put something together that looks decent, proof of concepts, and not have to work on the engine so much. That is done by Epic Games. They don't have to worry about it. It's all done out of house. That's their job to make the product. And these guys can focus on building the game, the artistic vision, and where they want to go. Hoyle says, I've been working with Unreal for a couple of years now. It's extremely easy to prototype with. We should be able to make something that looks very good. So interesting that these guys are moving on to Unreal from Frostbite when he himself worked on the actual Frostbite engine. There's no hiding that leaving was emotional. This is Lars talking, an emotional roller coaster. I could probably have kept on working there until they wheeled me out. So that tells you, it was Lars's decision to go ahead and leave DICE. He wasn't pushed out. Um, and then they talk about connection is what we've done for the last 20 years. Multiplayer games, getting people together, having them play as a squad management, also like playing in a band. So they talk about how it's going to be like a squad based game, it sounds like. So that's really all we have. But yeah, guys, there's the information. A new competitor has entered the ring. A lot of former DICE developers, we knew this was a thing. I made a video on this quite a while back when it very first started, but now they're actually starting to put it out in the world, what they are working on, what their studio looks like, and what these former DICE developers, we have Embark, now we have TTK Games, and I'm really rooting for them. It would be really cool to have a big squad shooter with its own cool mechanics built in Unreal Engine 5 by Mr. Battlefield. So something we will definitely keep an eye on this channel. If you're interested in it, hit the buttons and things because we will keep an eye on what TTK Games is working on over here on the old channel. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have an awesome day, and I hope to see you on the next one.